Hey guys, I'm back and we're going to be talking about the Revolutionary War today. We discussed primary and secondary sources the last couple of days, and today we're going to be getting to start our informational textbook on the American Revolution, okay? Remember, we are comparing and contrasting across multiple genres. We're going to start out with our informational text. So we're going to glean lots of facts and information. So if we were at school, we would be doing a KWL right now. What do we know? What do we want to know? And what do we learn as a result? So I want you to drop me something in the comments section about what you already know about the Revolutionary War. Maybe you know who it was between, maybe you know how long it lasted or what started it. Maybe you know about some of the battles, or maybe you know about the outcome. So leave me something in the comment section that you already know about the Revolutionary War, because we're going to have to backtrack a little bit and talk about the colonies. Where did these people come from? How did they get to America? And what started a fight with a country halfway across the world? So that's where we're going to be starting today. Now, I'm going to try to not give you very many quizzes and things directly related to what I read in this book. I know you may have some trouble with some YouTube links. Maybe your parents didn't get to order the book, so I'm going to try to avoid that. We probably will have a test at the end of the I Survived book, just basically basic facts and recall as to whether you listened or not. But I'm going to try to avoid that. So therefore, some of your assessment grades as we go through this unit are going to be on ReadWorks, obviously, Revolutionary War, if I can do that as often as possible, your IXL. Today, you just have a paragraph of the day, so you're going to read a couple paragraphs about, I think it's April Fool's Day, something that happened in April. We're going to start doing some of those as well as just kind of spiral review. So they may not all be related to the Revolutionary War or our unit, but know that they are all spiral skills that we're going to continue working on as we look at this unit. All right, today I'm going to read you chapter 1 so that we can start discussing life in the colonies, okay? So if you didn't get this book, it's just a research guide, and I'll show you the pictures as best I can. I may have to kind of turn them around after I read for you. Chapter 1, the colonies. In the 1700s, our country was not called the United States. Instead of states, America was divided in 13 colonies. Now listen to the definition of a colony. A colony is a land that is owned by another country. Britain controlled the American colonies. Now another name for Britain is England. Okay, so we were owned by them to begin with. Its king, George III, and the British government ruled them, and they ruled us from afar. The basic way they ruled us was by taxes. People often sailed from Europe and Britain to begin lives in the new colonies. Some came for freedom to worship as they pleased. Others came for land. Still others came for work. So freedom to worship, land, and work. The trip was long and dangerous. It could take 2 months or more. Who would really want to be on a trip that would take 2 months or more by ship? Storms often pounded the small ships. Sometimes there wasn't enough food on board. Many people became sick and died. The colonists. In the 1700s, there were almost 2 million people in the colonies. Believe me, we sent over tons of people as well as immigrants from lots of places to populate these colonies. So the fact that they just started going over there in the early 1600s and now by the 1700s, we have almost 2 million. But many families came from Britain. They did not think of themselves as Americans, so they didn't have their own identity yet. They thought of themselves as British. Their loyalty was to the king. And we'll later learn that these are the folks that are going to be called loyalists. And these are some of the folks we're going to have to worry about the most. They're in our own home territory, but they're not loyal to America. They're loyal to England. Other colonists came from Germany, France, Holland, Sweden, and Finland. Many of them came to farm the fertile land in the middle colonies. They didn't think of themselves as Americans either. They called themselves New Yorkers, Virginians, or other names based on their colonies. So while we have this united we stand thing now, one nation, basically it was every colony for themselves. The colonies also had slaves who were brought over from West Africa. Most slaves lived on large farms called plantations, and you guys learned a lot about them in 3rd grade because they were mostly in the southern colonies. They worked in the fields or as house servants. There were also American Indians in the colonies, and we'll learn that they were actually there first. They were there long before the colonists arrived, and many lost their lands as the colonies grew larger. The colonies prosper. Now, prosper means to become successful. If you remember anything about originally with the Mayflower and those that came over then, they had a hard time kind of getting established and getting started. So it took a while for them to kind of find their niche in their farming or in their industry. But prosper means they were starting to make money. Well, if they're starting to make money, remember who owned them. Remember who is going to want a share of that profit. By 1750, the colonies were prospering. America was rich in natural resources. Vast forests covered the land. There was wood for building and heating houses. There was plenty of wildlife and fish for food and furs. Much of the soil was good for growing crops. Now, here's a list of the natural resources that were there. Wood, good soil, wildlife, and fish. Natural resources come from your base word nature, found already there, and basically they repopulate themselves. So we have plenty of them to go around. Many colonists made money by selling their products to England. They sold rice, furs, tobacco, wheat, and other things they grew or produced. The colonists also brought many products from England. So for a while, it was back and forth with products. There weren't any major problems to start with. All the colonies but Pennsylvania were on the Atlantic coast. And if you can raise your hand and say, I've been to Myrtle Beach, then you've been to the Atlantic coast. The soil was poor in New England. Now, New England's going to be the part up there near New York and Rhode Island, and I'll show you on the map in just a minute. Some people were farmers, but many New England colonists became shipbuilders, fishermen, or merchants. Remember, they had poor soil there. In the middle colonies, the land was rich and fertile. Farmers grew grain that fed most of the other colonies. Those colonies were known as the bread colonies. So up top, remember, we had fishermen and merchants, shipbuilders. In the middle, we had bread growers, or wheat growers. And in the bottom, tobacco was the biggest crop in the southern colonies. Rice was also a popular crop, and many large plantations in South Carolina grew it in the wetlands. Now, here is a map of the original 13 colonies. We're going to look at our map key up at the top the best you can. Okay, we had part of Massachusetts up here, New England, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut right in here. We're making up more of our New England, okay? And New York was kind of on the cusp of both. But here are middle colonies. Remember, they were able to grow more bread. And then down here are southern colonies, which is where we had our big plantations, but also where the majority of our slaves were. Now, that is all we're reading today about these original 13 colonies. So obviously not 50 states to start. We mainly just started on the Atlantic coast. Remember, like Myrtle Beach would be down in here, near this part of the Atlantic coast, near South Carolina. So a lot of you guys have been there before. This is where we started. Remember, we were starting to have our own industries and our own markets, our own towns. We're going to learn about life in the colonies, what the homes looked like, what it was like to have to go and shop and the businesses there. So lots of neat facts and information. Hopefully you guys dropped something you already knew about the Revolutionary War, our life in the colonies. Now, tomorrow we're going to pick up with Chapter 2 and learn some more. I'll ask you some more questions, so make sure you listen carefully. But you also have a little assignment today. Remember, you're going to do paragraph of the day that I sent out as well. I believe it's on April Fool's Day today. All right, I'll catch back up with you guys tomorrow. Bye.